Hi guys, you're in the right place if you want to learn how to draw by understanding what you're looking at rather than breaking things down into shapes. And today, something a little bit different. I'd like us to do two very simple vector drawings, but after doing the outlines, I want us to color them in. So if you can find a couple of colored pencils, just the cheapest ones around. I have no idea where these came from. I certainly did not buy these for the boys, but just anything will do, because what I want us to do today is, besides the the vector drawings, I want us to use our knowledge of shading and contours to add a little bit of color to the outline so that you can see how effective it can be. All right, so you need your scrap piece of paper. I'm using this black fine marker again, rather than a pen, but whatever you can find is going to be good. Now, the other thing that I'd like you to do today is, you know how with the other vector drawings, I just felt like it was just so hard for me. I was pressing so hard and it's making the lines thick and whatnot, like a proper vector drawing. But anyway, so what I want you to do now is just make these your own. And I want you to sort of use the pen with a different weight or whatever. Just make them more like your style of sketch. And my job is just to sort of try to keep you online a little bit about proportions. But like, truth be told, I'm just trying to talk myself through it so that I don't make some ugly, horrible little birdie. But okay, are you ready? So the first one I want to do, and we're only going to do two today because it's just so bloody stressful that these little profiles will be enough for both of us to sort of like practice over time. So the first one is going to be, the little birdie is going to be going this way, looking up, okay, on a little branch. That's the objective. Now, what I want you to do is a small bill, okay? So remember, the direction of the bill dictates the direction of the head, okay? So we want him looking up a little bit. So just do a tiny, and use a light touch if you like. I want you just to sort of start using your own, add your own, style to what you're doing. Geez, don't do what I do. Be better than me. Okay, so I just want like a little bill facing up. Now, the other thing about the eye, which I should have said in the other videos, but better late than never. So I want the eye to be small. Okay, so look at the size of the bill that you've done and make the eye much smaller. Because if the eye is too big, then your little vector drawing is going to look really cartoony. Now, because he's going to be facing this way, we're going to see primarily the top of his head. So his eye is going to be like off to the side, right? So on the side of his head. So try to do something small, and we'll have the white at the top of the circle to show that he is looking forward. Now this is going to be the top of his head. His forehead is here, and then we're going to see the width of his head around here like this, right? So just draw the width of his head, and then we're getting into the back of his head. And then see how I'm just using light touches? I'm trying to be calm and relaxed. And then the back of his head is going to bump into the top of his back. And on this side, this is going to be his cheek. So we're not going to really see too much. We're going to see maybe a little bit of the feathers under his bill. And then we're going to see the curve of his cheek. And then that's going to be it for his face. And then we're going to see his upper chest. And then we're going to come straight down and we're going to see the side of his body, which is his tummy. And depending on, and just take your time. You can tell I am. And his tummy, don't go back too far, because all this stuff here with the back of his tummy and then the bum feathers and the tail and the tip of his wing, it's too complicated. So leave that right now. We've got to make sure that we get his, and don't make him too fat. God, all these instructions, I'm sorry. But, okay, he's little birdie looking this way, so you don't want to have him too plump. So now we just want to have his back. And because we're looking through his back, this is going to be like the wing on his left side, right? Now, here, oh, see, I could have made him a little plumper. This is the width of his back, and his shoulder, this other wing, is going to be here. So what I want you to do is just leave a small space between his wing and his tummy because of how we're looking down at him. Bring this in. And just use the bottom of the wing like that. And then the wings can be folded along the tail. That'd be okay. The tail goes straight into the body. And because we're looking at him from this side that way, these tail feathers are going to appear longer than the ones that are further away. Now, we know that we've got the fluffy bum feathers here, right? And they're going to bump into his body. And all this right here is the curve of his body under the wing. And then we've got the bum feathers. Now, let's put him on a branch. Rather than having him just hover with no legs. Okay, so where would his feet be? Well, we know that the legs attach right underneath his bum right here. So we'd see maybe a little bit of his back toe. And probably none of his front toes. So let's just put the branch, just a little twig. Though I tell you, I'd be super happy if the videos were just how many subscribers would I have if I just had a video drawing little twigs? Oh. Okay, done. I did give him a little bit of a front toe. Golly, are you as tired as I am? All right, now, enough complaining. Get your colored pencil because I want to show you how effective this is. First of all, we're so clever. We used our knowledge of anatomy to do our little sketch and just practice this over and over and over again. We had his little forehead, the width of his head, that bumps into the top of his back. We know that because of the angle, we're only going to see a little bit of his tummy. The eye is on the side of his face, and this is his cheek. Now, what we're going to do is be clever and use our knowledge of contour and shading, and we're going to add a little bit of color to him. Now, what I want you to do is just lay down a very light base of shading on your entire sketch. And the purpose of this is just to give you a little separate secret lesson about working with colored pencils, because whenever you want to do anything with colored pencils, and this is why, like, I don't want you using your good stuff, okay? Just whatever you can find in the cupboard. And as I say, I think these came with the table that I found on the side of the road, because I have no idea where they are, where they came from. But so with colored pencils, when you're working with them, to get depth of color in your artwork, you have to build up all these undertones to get the depth that you want in your artwork. So just, I want you to practice using a very light touch and color them all in. It's good practice for your hand. Now, typically, the little birdies they're a little bit, the feathers that are short and sticking up right where the face joins the bill gives the illusion of shading because the light can't get in there. So just darken him up by the bill. And also, this is the top of his head, which is going to catch the light. So this is we're going to use a little bit of shading here to give the impression of contour on his head. We know he's going to be a little bit darker underneath the bill, because that's going to be in shadow. Now, this is the back of his head, and all these feathers here bump into the top of his back, and this is curved, so we know that this is going to be a little bit darker at the back of his head. And then we've got the curve of his back as well. So just use a light pressure, and I just want you adding a little bit of shading at the back of his head to give the impression, to show that his head is tilted. Such a crappy colored pencil. It's hardly adding any color to the page, but you know, so what? You get the idea. See? Now, where else is he? This is the top of his back and his shoulder, so this is going to be a little bit darker over there. Now, where else is he going to be? Maybe at the very top of his breast, right here under the throat. Not a lot, okay? We know that the wing, because these flight feathers are straight and his body is curved, they typically cast a shadow on the curve of his body. And the other thing we know is that because his body curves and these little bum feathers are sticking out and stuff like that, they typically catch the light, but we want to get the curve of his body, plus his tummy is going to be in shadow anyway. So there's two things going on here. His wing is casting a shadow on his body, and his body is curving. And also, he's, because of the stance, this is going to be in shadow anyway. Now, the other thing we know is these flight feathers are going to be casting a little shadow right at the top of his tail. So darken that as well. Now the bum feathers, I know that they're in shadow, but in most of the birds that we've done, the bum feathers have been white. So they're pale anyway. So I don't want you to darken them as much as you have on the body. But if you like, you can just add a slightly darker tone to them. So see, we've done very, very little to our bird, but it's just made a really big difference. And I want you to see how, first of all, you know, like we're using our knowledge to do the vector sketch, and then we're using the rest of our knowledge about shading and contour to color him in a little bit. And like, he's super simple and basic, but I don't know. I just think he's super cute. Now, get a green or a black or something different. I don't know. Let's do the same thing to the branch. First of all, I want you putting down a really, really light base of shading. Really, really light touch with your colored pencil. And we're going to do the same thing. We know that the branch, that his body is casting a shadow on the stick. So let's darken the stick right where, close to his body, okay? And then because the little twig is curved, we know it's going to be darker underneath where it's not catching the light. So just add a little bit of depth in coloring, just a little bit more pressure along the bottom of the stick. And there's usually like an optical illusion of where it's a little bit darker on top as well. And please just work with like any color that you've got. Like if he's pink or green or whatever, it doesn't matter. We're just doing our learning session. So I think he looks like not that bad. And then you can do them again and change the angle of the head, you know, make it more tilted or whatever, because you understand all the anatomy. Okay. If that wasn't too agonizing, let's see if we can get through another one. Now, this time I want him on a little branch, and he's going to be basically level. So once again, oh, and he's going to be facing this way. Like, oh, geez, I need to go do some stretching before why is this so nerve-wracking? It shouldn't be. Okay, so what do? We're going to start with a little bill. Not too huge, okay? And use your own style, your own amount of pressure on your pen. Because this marker is like kind of like nice and fresh still, even though it's years old, it does drop a lot of ink, so I'm just going to have it a little bit lighter. And then we've got the little feathers that bump into the bill. Now, he's looking this way, so the eye is going to be located back here, and I'm reminding myself I want the eye to be small. And I want him looking forward, so I'm going to have the white. I think, you know, with my other vector drawings, I think I was making the eye too big. And really, of all the birds, you know, it's only the chickadee that has a tiny little bill and the eye is almost the same size. But everybody else, the eye is much smaller than the bill. So try to do that. Now, I want him level on the branch, which means his back is going to be almost flat. So what are we going to see? We're going to see his little forehead. And we're going to see the top of his head. And we're going to see the back of his head bumping into his back. And we're going to see his little throat. It's going to come down and bump into his chest, his upper chest, his rib cages. Just take your time, use a light touch. This is his rib cage. And then it's going to bump into the bottom curve of his tummy. And then because of his stance, we know that at the back, this goes almost straight up. So here, we want to have him, and try not to make him too fat, but anyway, we want his, this is the back of his head, and it's going to bump in, this is going to be his back. And because it's a side view, we're going to see most of his tummy and then his wing. So where's his shoulder? Find his shoulder. Let's put in the middle and take these flight feathers back. And join them up with, this is his upper back, his mid back. These are going to be feathers from either this wing that's going to be bumpy and the other wing, okay? And then we can give him, we're going to do this in a second, don't panic, but we know that his tail comes out of the body, and this wing is going to be a little bit below it, so let's just have his tail a little bit level. Doesn't have to be super fat. And here, we know we're going to have the fluffy bum feathers are going to be right here, and then all this kind of like is his bum feathers that are never very nice and smooth. Okay? And if you like, you know how there's usually like the longer flight feathers and then they bump up and all that kind of stuff. You just don't want to do too much detail with just a vector. The top of his head, the back of his head, and his upper back. Let's have this a little bit bumpy, if you like. And then we're going to have his throat, because his head's out a little bit, and his cheek, and then his chest. And if you've made him a bit too skinny, just give him a little bit more weight in his tummy. And this is going to be okay for our vector. Now, this is the back of his body, and we know his little elbow joint is going to be about here. So let's just put in, and he has to look balanced, okay? I just want to sketch in lightly where approximately where his feet will go, and then I'm going to put the branch in. And then we're kind of free to if this is going to be his long toe, we're going to have like just very, very lightly give the impression. Oop, it's a little bit too big. I have to do this one a little bit longer. And then a tiny little bit of cartilage. And I think that's all I want to do. Bloody nerve-wracking. Gosh, a nice, calm, relaxing session with Simply Draw. Okay, that's enough with the marker. Now, let's be geniuses and think about what we've done. Same thing. We know that he's going to be, geez, this is a mess around his face. I could do a little bit better job there. That's whatever. Okay, so get your colored pencil. And what I want you to do is we're just going to think. So typically, he's going to have, oh, wait a second. Speaking of thinking, I want you to put down a base layer of very, very light shading. Just practice with your hand, light touch. Because as I say, if you're working with your expensive colored pencils and you want to build up tone in your artwork, this is what you're going to be doing with one color, and then you're going to go over it again with another color and build it up slowly that way. So we're just practicing by having a light hand and getting down a base layer of color. Now, let's go back to his face. We know that typically they're a little bit darker right where the feathers touch the beak. And he's going to be a little bit darker under his throat because this is going to be in shadow. Let's put the curve of his head. Now, the cheek feathers are typically flat, so they're going to catch the light, but usually where the feathers pass the eye, they can be, it's almost like there's a little eyebrow and a little dark notch almost, for lack of a better word, right past the eye. We're going to put that in too. Now, with this dent in the top of his chest, where the throat comes in and then meets the top curve of his chest, should be a little bit darker there, not a lot. Where else is he gonna, the back of the neck is gonna be slightly darker in the shade, and the top of his back is gonna be slightly darker because it's curved inward. So just darken him up a little bit there too. Not tons. The wing is going to be casting a shadow on the body, but here's where I want you to be careful, because this right here is the curve, and these are the feather tips that stick out at the back of his body, and these are typically thin and catching the light. So the actual curve of his body stops short. So I don't want you adding the shadow right at the end of your sketch, okay? Because this is where his little body curves, and there will be a small amount of shadow cast on this curve by his wing. I'll fix that up. Now, is there any shading to do on the tail? No, because this wing is passing the tail. Oh, I don't know, maybe, no, I don't think there should be. Okay, so we're gonna just have a little bit of shading here where the wing is casting a shadow on the body, and then we've got the curve of his body, and then this is the bottom of his tummy. This is going to be in shadow. So make sure he's shaded here. And I think that's all that we should do. Maybe, how much did you do at the back of his neck? Because these are all the head feathers that are bumping into the top of his back. And then this is actually the curve, like the rounded curve of his body. And this is where his head, the neck joins. So if you'd like, and you can control your pencil, you could put a little bit of shading in there as well. I don't really like the line that I did for his head, but oh well, he doesn't mind. Okay, get your other pencil. Let's do the same thing with the branch. I want you to put down, and don't worry about coloring his little feet green or purple or whatever as well. If you've got small spaces where between his toes, it's okay. So once again, we just put down our very light tones initially, and we know that because he's casting a shadow on the branch, right underneath his body it's going to be darker, so we're going to go back in and just add more tone, slightly more pressure with our colored pencil right underneath his body, and then we'll just add a small amount of shading at the edges of the branch, the little twig, to show its curve. How about that? Probably can't see a thing because of the lighting. Trust me, you're better off. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to cover today. So practice these shapes, and then take it one step further by adding your kick-ass knowledge about shading and contours, okay? So as always, thank you for your company, and I'll see you next time.